All right, welcome to the second edition of the pilot. And I'm here with our CEO, Pat Cassidy, and Diane Fleeser, and tell you got a big long title, and I get it wrong every time. Wait, it's on your thing. Outreach and Service Integration Coordinator.
Well said.
There you go.
Yeah.
So this edition of the pilot, we're talking about our self-sufficiency programming. Let's start with some background. You've been here longer than anyone at the agency currently, even longer than me. So, in 22 years? 28 years. Compare kind of what we're doing now to what we had 28 years ago. When you took over the reins of TrueNorth, then NCCS, what kind of self-sufficiency programs were we running?
We really weren't doing self-sufficiency. We had much more limited funding and a much more limited staff, and basically what we did is kind of the charity model. If we had something, we would give that to our clients and wish them well and have them move on. And when we ran out of resources, then we were out for that season. So that transition has gone significantly. It's a 360, and what we're doing today is very purpose-driven, data-driven, and working toward making sure that our families are working toward self-sufficiency.
Oh, I wanted to talk briefly about this idea, the idea of self-sufficiency as in a general term, because I asked you when we were prepping for this, I asked, what makes somebody self-sufficient? When are you self-sufficient? And I think the expression you use was self-sufficiency is not an event. Mm-hmm. You don't achieve self-sufficiency. You're always working towards self-sufficiency. It's about helping people along that journey. Am I?
Absolutely. The goal is, to help create a more sustainable impact for our clients. Right. So we really look at self-sufficiency as a process that goes beyond just serving the individual, but to also the community. So we're looking to build social, economic, and personal capital for all of the clients that we're serving, so that, should they find themselves in a situation that is a crisis situation, they are more resilient to...
They know what to do,
yes,
where to go.
Exactly.
They can help somebody else know where to go.
Yeah,
all
kind
those
of
things.
Breaking that cycle and being more educated about what's available.
So when did we, can you recall, it seems to me, because in 16 years I've seen a real slow gradual change towards our programming, but when and how did we decide to change the conversation about the kind of services we do?
Well, about 8 years ago, we really started to realize that the need was so great and the resources were limited that we had to find a different way to be able to provide services. And obviously one of them would be to be able to reduce the number of times we would see a client, right, and be able to move them off of this system and assistance. So, but about 6 years ago, we were very purpose-driven, and it started with our heat and energy program, where we very much decided that self-sufficiency had to be a part of the dialogue and the center of our conversation with all of our clients.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the difficulty in being proactive while at the same time you have families with emergency needs. Mm-hmm. Talk about, we work in a nonprofit, so we have, very limited funding. Mm-hmm. So if we decide, hey, it's a better idea for us to focus our efforts on getting people off of our assistance, sure, but at the same time, right now they need our assistance. Right. How do we do that? How were we able to do both those things?
Okay. Well, one of the things we started to notice was distinct patterns that we were seeing within some of the clients that we were serving. And one of them was the group that was always in crisis, and there was never a way that we could see how to get them out of crisis and keep them safe. And then we also realized that we saw a group that would come in for a short period of time because they had a situational problem, and that threw them off the mark, and with a short period of time and assistance they were back on their own. And then there was this group in the middle who we saw on a regular basis with no real movement towards self-sufficiency. And so actually we started identifying our client base, and that's what drove us toward the three-phase program that we have now in actually putting folks within the bucket that they really need, right, to fall in.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm trying to remember back, when we first got our toes really into this self-sufficiency programming, it required us getting more funding because the funding we had was covering those families in crisis. Mm-hmm. So getting additional funding to do this. And the funding that was available for that was no longer really available for a small local nonprofit.
Correct.
If I remember in the story right, the first time around you had to represent X number of people or 6 counties, 10
10
counties?
counties
Or-
or 500,000 in population.
Right, so you couldn't even apply for this money unless you represented 500,000 people and or 10 counties. And so TrueNorth said, oh, we can do that. But that was one of the reasons. So in order for us to keep doing the immediate needs and go towards self-sufficiency, we had to go for this new pool of money, which
Right.
meant pulling together a 10-county consortium.
Yeah.
Now, give me the broad strokes on how that happened the first time around.
Well, we had no notice that there was going to be a change. So prior to
okay.
that, we'd be able to apply for about $40,000 for Newaygo County, just serving Newaygo County. And without any notice, all of a sudden the request for proposals came out and said it's 500,000 in pop and it's 10 counties.
And or, right?
Or you're out. You can't apply.
All right.
So in a very short period of time, about 2 months, we put together our 10-county consortium.
And I think it's amazing to think the timing and how it worked out. Because if we hadn't done it, nobody else would. And I'm not saying that to toot our own horn. There just wasn't anybody else big enough with enough experience to pull together a 10-county consortium to do it. And then once we did that first time, and then it was how many years later before then it was like now it have to be 1 million people or so many more. Did it bump up the next?
It actually didn't bump
Okay.
up from there, but one of the things we realized is that there were only so many folks that were going to get a grant,
Okay.
and we needed to be able to show the state that we had the capacity to do that and solve one of their problems, which was to serve more of the state.
So that's probably, I think, the reason or the way in which we were able to kind of stay ahead of the curve on this thing. Because it was kind of, thrust upon us. You're going to have to do this because nobody else can. So TrueNorth stepped up and we did that. So then the program has just grown and grown. So first it was the 10-county consortium, 500,000 people, and or next time around it was, I think, how many did we on the second?
I think we went to 13.
13 counties.
And then we went to 18.
Right.
And then we went to 64.
18 to 64, yeah. That makes logical sense, right?
Actually, there was a 30 in there. I'm sorry. We
Okay.
went to 18 to 30, and then we went to 64.
This was over like a 6-year period. Oh, okay. And this is applying for funding from the state, federal funding through the state? Okay, so federal funding that came through the state of Michigan.